The Middle East, a region long accustomed to conflict, is once again teetering on the brink. This ancient land, rich in history and culture, has seen countless battles and power struggles over the millennia. Yet, the current situation feels particularly dire, as if the very fabric of the region is unraveling. The recent eruption of violence between Israel and Hamas has sent shockwaves across the globe, raising fears of a wider conflagration that could draw in regional and global powers. The intensity of the clashes, the sheer scale of destruction, and the tragic loss of life have left the international community on edge, wondering how far this conflict will escalate. As bombs rain down on Gaza and rockets streak towards Israeli cities, the world watches with bated breath, wondering if this is the spark that ignites a global wildfire. Families huddle in fear, children cry out in terror, and the skies are lit up with the deadly dance of warfare. The human cost is immeasurable, and the psychological scars will last for generations. This is not just another chapter in the seemingly intractable Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The stakes have never been higher. The potential for a broader regional war looms large, with neighboring countries watching closely, ready to act in defense of their interests. The delicate balance of power in the Middle East is at risk of tipping into chaos. The involvement of regional actors like Iran, the shadow of nuclear weapons, and the interconnectedness of the globalized world mean that the consequences of this conflict could be felt far beyond the streets of Gaza and Tel Aviv. Iran's support for Hamas and its own strategic ambitions add a dangerous layer of complexity to the situation. The spectre of nuclear escalation, though remote, cannot be entirely dismissed. The world is holding its breath, praying for a swift resolution, for a flicker of hope in the darkness. Diplomatic efforts are underway, with global leaders engaging in intense discussions, seeking a path to de-escalation. Protests for peace are erupting in cities around the world as ordinary people demand an end to the violence and a return to dialogue. Yet the path to peace is treacherous, fraught with obstacles and the potential for miscalculation. The history of failed negotiations and broken promises casts a long shadow over current efforts. Military checkpoints and barriers symbolize the deep divisions and mistrust that must be overcome. The road to lasting peace is long and winding, with no guarantees of success. The spectre of World War III, once relegated to the realm of dystopian fiction, now casts a long and ominous shadow over our collective future. The interconnectedness of our world means that a conflict in one region can quickly spiral into a global crisis. The stakes are unimaginably high, and the consequences of failure are too dire to contemplate. The question is, can we summon the wisdom, the courage, and the political will to step back from the abyss? Can we learn from the lessons of history and choose a path of peace and cooperation? The answer lies in our collective hands, in the choices we make today. The world watches, waits, and hopes for a brighter tomorrow. As the bombs continue to fall, the skies over Gaza are filled with the deafening sounds of explosions and the sight of plumes of smoke rising from the rubble. The relentless aerial bombardment has turned once bustling neighborhoods into scenes of devastation and despair, and the death toll mounts, with each passing day bringing more tragic news of lives lost. The numbers are not just statistics, they represent fathers, mothers, children, and friends whose lives have been abruptly and violently ended. A humanitarian catastrophe of immense proportions is unfolding in Gaza. The scale of human suffering is almost unimaginable, with countless families torn apart and entire communities left in ruins. The densely populated coastal enclave, already grappling with poverty, unemployment, and a crumbling infrastructure due to years of blockade, is now facing an even more dire situation. The blockade has severely restricted the flow of goods and services, leaving the people of Gaza in a state of perpetual hardship. Hospitals in Gaza are overwhelmed with casualties struggling to cope with the influx of wounded civilians. Medical staff are working around the clock, often without adequate resources to save lives and provide care to those in need. Medical supplies are running dangerously low, and there are growing concerns about the spread of disease in the overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. The lack of clean water and sanitation facilities is exacerbating the health crisis, putting even more lives at risk. The relentless bombardment has forced thousands of terrified families to flee their homes, seeking refuge in UN-run schools and shelters, which are now stretched beyond capacity. These makeshift shelters are struggling to provide even the most basic necessities such as food, water, and medical care. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is a stark reminder of the human cost of this conflict. The suffering of the people is a poignant testament to the devastating impact of war on innocent civilians. Innocent men, women, and children are bearing the brunt of the violence, their lives upended by the cycle of hatred and revenge. The psychological trauma inflicted on the survivors, especially the children, will have long-lasting effects on their mental health and well-being. The international community must act swiftly and decisively to provide humanitarian aid to the beleaguered people of Gaza. Aid organizations are working tirelessly to deliver food, medical supplies, and other essential items, but the scale of the need is overwhelming, and to work towards a ceasefire that will end the bloodshed. Diplomatic efforts must be intensified to bring about a lasting peace, one that addresses the root causes of the conflict and paves the way for a brighter future for the people of Gaza. Looming large over the current conflict is the shadow of Iran, a nation whose influence and actions reverberate across the Middle East. Iran's regional ambitions and its unwavering support for Hamas have long been a source of concern for Israel and its allies. This support is not just ideological but deeply practical, involving substantial financial and military aid. Over the years, Iran has funneled millions of dollars to Hamas, providing the group with the resources it needs to sustain its operations. This financial backing is complemented by a steady stream of military aid, including sophisticated weaponry and extensive training programs. These efforts have significantly bolstered Hamas's capabilities, enabling it to carry out more effective and deadly attacks. The enhanced capabilities of Hamas, thanks to Iranian support, have emboldened the group, making it a more formidable adversary for Israel. This has led to an escalation in hostilities, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Israel views Iran's involvement as a direct and existential threat to its security. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, are on constant high alert, ready to respond to any aggression. Israeli leaders have repeatedly warned that they will not tolerate Tehran's efforts to establish a foothold on their borders. This has led to a series of military confrontations and a tense standoff that shows no signs of abating. The possibility of Israel expanding its military operations to target Iranian assets in Syria is a constant concern. Such actions could easily escalate into a broader conflict, drawing in other regional and global powers. The specter of a preemptive strike against Iran's nuclear facilities adds another dangerous layer of complexity to the conflict. Such a move could trigger a full-scale war, with devastating consequences for the entire region. Iran's involvement in the conflict is part of its broader strategy to expand its influence throughout the Middle East. By supporting various proxy groups, Iran aims to project power and challenge the dominance of the United States and its allies. The presence of US military bases in the region and the close alliance between the United States and Israel are seen by Iran as significant obstacles to its ambitions. This has led to a complex web of alliances and enmities that further complicate the situation. By supporting proxy groups like Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran seeks to create a network of allies that can exert pressure on its rivals. These groups are well armed and highly motivated, making them effective tools in Iran's strategy. In addition to Hamas and Hezbollah, Iran also supports Shia militias in Iraq. These militias have played a significant role in the region's conflicts, often acting as Iran's enforcers on the ground. Through these proxy groups, Iran seeks to undermine its rivals and project power far beyond its borders. This strategy has been effective in creating instability and challenging the status quo. However, this approach has also fueled instability and conflict in the region. The ongoing violence has led to widespread destruction and a humanitarian crisis, with millions of people displaced from their homes. The path to a lasting peace remains elusive. Efforts at diplomacy and peace talks have repeatedly faltered, leaving the region in a state of perpetual conflict. The international community continues to search for solutions, but the deep-seated animosities and complex geopolitical interests make this a daunting task.